It is here.
Good morning. It is July 5th, 10 o'clock, July 5th, 2022. We'll call to order the meeting of the Story County Board of Supervisors. Please stand with me if you're able and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to adopt today's agenda?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Hens.
Aye.
Merkin.
Aye.
Liesel. Aye. Now it's time for public comment number one. This comment period is for the public to address topics on today's agenda. If you'd like to make public comment, you can step forward to the microphone or raise your hand on Zoom or *7 if you're on the phone. We have one. Okay. If you would please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, this is Joyce Hornstein, and I live at 30501 Doe Circle in Huxley.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You wanted to make a comment about.
Oh, yes. I thought maybe for some reason we're not seeing my picture, but I guess I'm on, so I'll go ahead and do this. Okay, I'm an adjacent landowner to Wood Creek subdivision. And I just want to make a few comments. I have a couple questions. But anyway, the Wood Creek subdivision, even though they call it Wood Creek, it is located on both sides of Ballard Creek, which provides a main drainage area for much of the surrounding Huxley area. Ballard Creek empties into the South Skunk River. And where the development is located, the permanent pasture that is there and the trees provide much of the erosion control for the surrounding steep terrain. I've observed in the last few years that Huxley and the surrounding 2-mile area is the fastest growing area in Story County. And presently much development for housing is taking place. Because of the increased development, I just want to point out that I think it's very important that the county planning and development and the city of Huxley cooperatively update and review the watershed management plan for the area, the Huxley area, to protect the wildlife and water and soil resources. And I guess the other question I have is, what is the bigger picture for this Wood Creek area? What is the future plan for the area?
Thank you, Joyce.
I'm trying to figure out if Ballard Creek is in 4 Mile Creek. It is not in either headwaters of the South Skunk or Iowa Creek, WMA. So, not familiar with the area.
Look into it a little bit further.
Yeah, I think so. I thought I had a map of 4 Mile watershed, but I only have maps on my computer right now, the Iowa and the headwaters of the South Skunk, and both of those end just south of Ames. So
We can address it during the presentation.
Okay. We will be having a presentation from planning and development later on in the meeting, and they can address those concerns at that time. We do have the comment that you submitted as well. With that,
So she'd like to stay on.
Yeah.
If that works.
would you like to stay on the meeting, Joyce? And wait until that time? Or if you're available to stay on?
Joyce, we have a fairly short agenda, so it's not going to be that long, if you can hear me. I don't think.
Yeah, it's not a very long agenda. I can't hear audio. Do you want to just type in a message that will address it during the planning and development's presentation, which will be up
I
shortly?
wonder if is she on her phone or on a computer? I wonder if she's got her cell phone.
She's on the computer. So it works.
Make sure your volume's up. Make sure your volume's up on the computer. Seems like she heard us and she didn't.
Right. Yep. So while we're getting a message to Joyce, is there anyone else who would like to make public comment on anything on today's agenda?
Did you lose her audio? Just after I spoke, it never would came back. Because see, they had control when I was speaking and it never came back.
Okay, seeing no one else who is wanting to make public comment at this time, we'll close public comment period number 1. We have nothing for agency reports, consideration of minutes.
I would move approval of minutes of the June 28th board meeting.
Second. Moved and seconded, Merkin. Edens. Aye. Basil, aye. We have no personnel actions to consider. Consideration of claims.
I move approval of the 7/7/2022 claims as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded, Edens. Merkin.
Aye.
Basil, aye. Moving on to consent agenda, was anyone?
I'd like to pull number 5.
Okay.
I would move approval of consent agenda omitting item 5 for now.
Second.
Moved and seconded, Merkin.
Aye.
Edens.
Aye.
Basil, aye.
I just wanted to pull the resolution on the urban fringe plan. My understanding, and I see that Amelia and Andrea are here, is one of the reasons for doing that is they're needing a little bit more time to review all the comments that have taken place with the proposed draft urban fringe plan. I know that we need to vote on something before the 11th, so that's why it's on our agenda. But to make sure that we are spending our time doing our due diligence and hearing from, we've gotten a volume of emails, phone calls, and then from those public meetings as well. I just wanted to pull that. No changes. I just want to make sure the public understood exactly why it was being, why it was on our agenda.
Yeah, I certainly want to appreciate having more time because we've gotten lots of good input. And we're still getting it.
Right,
So-
right. I know I'm still continuing to meet, and I believe you all are too, meeting with people as well. So I just wanted folks to realize that the reason it was being extended is because of their input, and we want to make sure we're addressing landowner concerns the best that we can.
Yeah, I appreciate you pulling it because I think it's important that we highlight that for people.
With that, I would approve consideration of resolution 23-2, extending the urban fringe plan. to
We have to vote on the consent agenda. Did we vote on? the
We voted
consent?
on consent.
Okay.
You already have a motion of second before you need to vote.
We didn't vote on the consent.
We
We
didn't.
just made the
We
motion.
voted on consent agenda.
Uh-huh.
Right,
We pulled
Yeah.
this one.
So
right.
we need to,
So you need to vote on the consent agenda. You had a motion of second, I don't think you had a vote.
We
we
did.
did.
We did. We voted on it.
It's okay.
Let's do it.
That's fine. Because I pulled it.
I didn't think we did.
So Merkin.
Aye.
Edens.
Aye.
Basil, aye. And then item 5.
And I would move approval of item number 5 as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded, Edens. Aye. Merkin.
Aye.
Basil, aye. No public hearing items. Moving on to additional items, discussion and consideration of revised open records policy after 7-day review. Good morning, Sandra.
This is after the 7-day review, and I have not received any comments concerning the policy change.
If I recall, this is mainly a policy change, partially due to legislative language changes and you're making sure that we are conforming with that.
Correct. And it was just one sentence added to the policy.
So, okay, great, thank you.
Any questions?
Nope, Madam Chair, aye. Need a motion?
I would move adoption of the open records policy as revised.
Second.
Secretary Merkin.
Aye.
Head, aye. Basil, aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving to discussion and consideration of resolution 23-1 Wood Creek Residential Parcel Subdivision. Good morning, Andrea.
Morning. I'll try to make a brief presentation, but address Joyce's question about future land use in that area and around Huxley. So we received a residential parcel subdivision plat for Wood Creek subdivision submitted by CGA Consultants. This is on 550th Avenue, just adjacent to Huxley city limits in the Ironbridge subdivision there. Districts, it is A1 agricultural, and that zoning will remain with the subdivision. Huxley Fire and Ambulance, it's in the Ballard School District. Xenia Rural Water District, it's served by Consumers Energy, and of course is in the Ballard Creek watershed. As far as the larger watershed it's a part of, we quickly looked at the map. It didn't appear that it was in the 4-mile WMA. So any type of watershed planning for that area, I think, would fall under the countywide watershed assessment document that we're using as a guide for the county as a whole. Next slide, please. So location, you can see it's just down there. Again, it's adjacent to City of Huxley's city limits as they come up and have that Iron Bridge subdivision just north of Huxley. Next slide. Highlighted in blue is the property that they are proposing to subdivide. The aerial imagery is not quite up to date. There is an existing dwelling in the southwest corner of that property where it looks like all timber there in the photo. Some of that timber has been removed for the driveway to the existing home and of course for the home itself. The initial proposal was to have a second buildable lot north of Ballard Creek. And you can see Ballard Creek kind of winding through the center of the property there. After some back and forth and some discussion with the applicant and the property owner, proposed lot 2 was changed to an outlot, which means we would not issue a permit to build a dwelling or other non-ag development. So if someone were to put, a livestock shelter or something out there for ag uses, they wouldn't necessarily need a permit to do that unless it was in the floodplain. But yeah, you cannot build a dwelling on an outlot, and that's what's actually being proposed today since they've updated the plat. And as you can see, there's Ironbridge subdivision across the way, and then Huxley, city limits extend to the south. There's a little bit of unincorporated area between the rest of Huxley. Next slide, please. So proposed lot 1, it is 7.42 net acres. Like I mentioned, it contains the existing dwelling. You can see the dwelling and the pool and the septic fields on the subdivision plat there, those rectangles. And then outlot Z north of Ballard Creek. Again, that is not developable with this subdivision because it is being platted as an outlot. So it should stay pretty much as is unless someone decides to use it for ag purposes. It is in the A1 district. So you could have livestock, you could have row crop on that parcel if you wished to, but you could not build on it. It is in grassland and timber at this time. And there was floodplain on the parcel as well. Next slide. So outlot Z and natural resource preservation, I think this kind of starts to get at Joyce's questions. We did have concerns in the Planning and Development Office about how natural resources would be impacted if lot 2 were platted as a buildable lot. The majority, I don't have the map here, but the majority of that property is mapped natural resource area in the county comprehensive plan. Under our current ordinance, we do allow up to 15% of mapped natural areas to be impacted by development, but that 15% was almost reached with the construction of the existing house. And there wasn't going to be a reset on that threshold for the subdivision. It's for that whole property as it sits now. So we're concerned about further development and, if it met the purpose of the C2C plan, if it was in conformance with the C2C plan, since it was an ag conservation area and a mapped natural area. The city of Huxley, during that initial review with that initial plat, their resolution to approve the subdivision did fail because of concerns about, I believe, because of concerns about further development in that area. So we had some discussion with the applicant. They then decided to plat it as an outlot. Again, so it would not be buildable. And they took the resolution back to the city of Huxley, took that subdivision plat back to them, and they did vote to approve it, I believe, on June 28th. So both City of Cambridge waived their review, and City of Huxley has now voted to approve a resolution for that subdivision, as you've seen it here today. These are just our regulations for residential parcel subdivisions. You've seen these all before. If you have any questions, let me know. But again, they have to be within the A1 district. Maximum of 2 buildable lots are allowed. In this case, just the 1 buildable lot, and then the outlot is what they proposed. Next slide, please. So comments from the public. On June 23rd, we did mail to surrounding property owners within a 1/4 mile notice letters. At that time, the notice letters, they had the original subdivision configuration of lot 1 and lot 2. So it was proposing 2 buildable lots at that time. Now it is not, it's just lot 1 and the outlots. So we did receive 1 formal comment. You've heard from that individual this morning with concerns about how this might impact Ballard Creek and in particular erosion control if that timber or grassland were disturbed. And then as I mentioned, the City of Cambridge waived their review and the City of Huxley voted to approve the updated subdivision plat. I can address a little bit more. I think the next slide's the last one, Bryce. Well, let's say, yeah, I'll go through this a little bit more. So as I mentioned, we were concerned about natural resource impacts. And I've talked about, they've changed the subdivision plat to address that. At this point, since it's platted as an outlot, and this is mostly addressed to Joyce as well, I hope she can hear me. In order to build on that outlot in the future, they would actually have to rezone it and plat it as a minor or major subdivision if a rezoning were approved. Because of the amount of mapped natural areas on that property, in order to approve a rezoning request, there would be conditions on the rezoning that either the conservation overlay were applied to any subdivision, or they'd have to grant conservation easements to the county, for instance, in order to have that rezoning request approved. And then they could request a minor or major subdivision to have multiple lots on that parcel. So as it is right now, it's not buildable. They could request a rezoning in the future, but that would have limitations and restrictions on what is done to the property just to have it even be considered for a rezoning. It would also have to score a low enough LISA, land evaluation and site assessment, to again be considered for a rezoning request.
What's going on the property now?
It's just that 1 dwelling in the southwest corner. As
But
far
the
as
part that's an outlot, is that being used at all for anything?
I'm not aware of any. We did ask about current use. I believe it's just there as grassland and timber. It doesn't appear there's any ag use, any active ag use. I have not seen any active grazing of livestock, no.
So if it can't be another development lot, why are the owners pursuing the outlot right now? Just, are they wanting to sell it for ag purposes? I'm just curious.
I believe just the main reason is to separate the house off from the rest of the parcel, is just to split off that remaining ground and have a smaller parcel for the dwelling. As far as future plans, we did not really get a lot of information on that from the property owners.
I was kind
I
of
see
wondering, though,
Amelia's
like,
coming
why separate it when you can't do anything? You're not
Yeah.
doing anything. That's
Good
what
morning.
I was
Good
asking.
morning. So I think this is one of the first residential parcel subdivisions you all have seen where it was, I don't want to say speculatively built in order to do a division to create a second lot to sell off. It was, the property was purchased, I think, with the understanding that if you built one house, you could come later and create a second lot. Kind of speculatively, I think there's 2 property owners involved. One, it does some development. And so I think the property owner with the house needs to retain ownership of the parcel with their house to, close out the construction loans. So that's lot 1. An outlot, Z, I don't know who will own that or if it will be for sale in the future. But I think there's two property owners involved just to get the ownership cleared up.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And then next slide, Bryce. So our recommendation with this updated plat would be for the Board of Supervisors to approve Resolution 2301. Your other options, of course, are to put conditions on it and vote to approve, or outright deny it, or remand it back to the applicant for more information. And I can answer further questions if you have any.
So as it is right now, someone could put livestock.
Because it's the A1 district, so that's livestock, row crop, that's all principal permitted use in the A1 district, and this isn't changing the zoning at all. So anything you can do in A1, they could do. They could put livestock, they could, till it if they wanted to.
What's it surrounded by on the east?
On the east is another row cropped, and we can go back
there's
to, I
ag
think,
land to the
slide
east.
3. Yeah, there's ag land to the east. It looks like it's all in row crop. And then to the west there is that Iron Bridge subdivision that is actually within the city limits of Huxley. And to the south is residential development in the county, because that's not Huxley city limits there to the south. And then, a little bit to the north, there's some ag use happening.
So what you're saying is somebody could come in later and propose a rezoning of residential development, but there would be lots of things that would have to be done to assure that they're not going to mess up the natural area, and probably assuming that those things might alleviate Ms. Weinstein's concerns.
Conservation easements or doing the conservation design overlay, which would essentially say you can't impact these portions of it because of what we've surveyed on the property.
And that's required. We can't approve a rezoning if that's not done.
And whereas we don't have a county-wide watershed plan because the county is not a WMA on its own, there is a lot of information about all the creeks in Story County, and particularly about Valley Creek, I think, in there. So that's probably something you could look into.
Yeah, and
Good information if you were to have
yeah.
a development request at some point.
And due to the size of the existing house, we would require a stormwater management plan at that point.
Post-construction.
Yeah, as well. So that would require that runoff on the site is controlled to basically pre-settlement when it was just a meadow or a prairie. So that would come if this was ever rezoned and further developed as well.
It sounds like to me that you've got a good handle on all those issues.
Like some trigger protections are in place.
Looks like she's still on.
I hope you were able to hear that, Joyce. You're able to hear us now. Yeah, I was just saying if she had any additional questions, if she was gonna, if you have additional questions, Joyce, if you want to raise your hand, we can unmute you. You're still muted,
Yeah, it looks like you,
Joyce.
I think she's muted on her end.
Yeah. Are you able to unmute yourself?
Okay.
So,
Yes, sorry, we've been having little problems with this, but yes, I heard the majority of Scarlett's presentation, and I will probably rewatch the recording. At this point, I don't have any questions, and I appreciate the thorough report.
Thank you.
We appreciate you contacting us.
Yep, thank you.
I agree. I appreciate the thorough report.
Ready for a motion?
I'm ready.
Okay, I move that the board of supervisors approves resolution 23-01, the Wood Creek residential partial subdivision as submitted.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Evans.
Aye.
Merkin.
Aye.
Basil. Aye. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
All right, moving right along. We have nothing for departmental reports, other reports, any upcoming agenda items? Now it's time for public comment number 2, comments from the public on items not on this agenda. The board may not take any action on the comments due to requirements of open meetings law, but may do so in the future. Anyone wishing to make public comment, you can raise your hand on Zoom or step forward to the microphone. See no one, we will close comment period number 2 and move on to liaison assignments, committee meetings, updates from the supervisors.
For I'm in today and tomorrow morning. I've got a couple meetings tomorrow afternoon. Thursday, I'm gonna try to do at least partial of those. There's a webinar part of aging resources that we're doing, but I also saw that there's an urban enrollment meeting that Nate is having at 10, so I was gonna try to attend that. And then rescheduled our Story County court security group is meeting on Friday. Oh, looks like Monday as well. We have a tour. Like a couple night schedule for a week tour.
I think it's waterfall in the week. I talked to somebody on a Mississippi River Basin watershed management project tomorrow. I'm not sure what that's about. They wanted to interview me about how what we were doing in central Iowa fit into that. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm meeting for, getting ready for our next Headwaters meeting on Thursday. Conservation Thursday afternoon, and I have a beta annexation meeting at 2 o'clock on my calendar. So I don't know if that's the same meeting you have, Lisa, or a different one.
Might have been. I think one was the annexation and one was the urban renewal. I don't know. I thought there was something that I got. There were 2 different meetings.
Or maybe you're doing one and I'm doing the other one. Isn't that a good use of resources? How did we do
I
that?
couldn't remember. We can double check and see.
Let's
what's
double
lined up.
check that. Yeah, let's see what's going on. And then Monday, I will also be on the Whirly Creek tour and just otherwise catching up on a lot of stuff this week. So that's all I have.
I'm gonna head back out to our campsite here shortly. Gonna zoom in on a couple of meetings this week, try and catch up on some reading. And then I also will be at the meeting or at the tour of Orley Creek on Monday. That is all I have. As well. Anything further?
Adjournment.
Second. Moved and seconded. Merkin. Aye. Evans.
Aye.
Basil. Aye. We're adjourned.